Lords, first oral question, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
This government welcomes and shares the Howard League's determination to support those serving the IPP sentence, but we cannot take any steps that would put the public at risk. For that reason, we remain firmly of the view that the Parole Board must determine that a prisoner serving the IPP sentence is safe to be released, having regard to the statutory release test, and that the IPP action plan is the best way to prepare offenders for release. The report includes a range of additional complex recommendations which we're exploring in full.
My Lords, the new Justice Secretary, David Lammy, wrote to a constituent in 2021, as IPP prisoners spend longer and longer in prison without any prospect of release, their mental health continues to decline and they start to display behavioural traits which make their release even less likely. So he gets it. The Howard League report, which has a foreword by the noble and learned Lord Thomas of Cumgead, makes innovative recommendations as to how the residual prisoners, the prisoners who've never been released, and there are about 1,000 of them, could actually make progress through the parole board systems. Would the noble Lord agree to discuss this with his new colleague and to make a formal response to the Howard League report, ideally in writing?
My new Deputy Prime Minister, my new boss, shares my determination to do all we can for those serving IPP sentences and their families, and whilst ensuring we don't take any steps that puts the public at risk. And having been visiting prisons for over 20 years and meeting many IPP prisoners, I completely agree that a number of them need support with their mental health. That is why the IPP action plan is the right place to support these people, especially as what we're doing is we updated it on July the 17th, and the progression panels with senior psychiatrists are already making a difference. In the last year, 154 IPPs have been released that had never been released before, but we have a lot more to do, and I will write to the noble Lord in due course.
My Lord, the Howard League's excellent
How many of these prisoners are now refusing to engage with the processes required to satisfy the Parole Board's current tests for release because they've lost confidence in the system? And if they have, is it not time to think again?
The Parole Board are the best way to determine whether someone's risk is sufficient to be managed in the community. And what is important is that when IPP prisoners go in front of the Parole Board, they are prepared in a way to have a successful release. That is why the IPP action plan is the right way to go. And that is why we are seeing significant increases in the number of people being released and also those being re-released. So what we need to do is to make sure the IPP action plan works, but also, and this is one of the things I'm doing for most of my days, is making sure that our prisons are good prisons. They are prisons that rehabilitate people and make sure that when they leave, they don't come back.
The Minister's approach. There are two sides to this story. One of them is obviously the points made by our noble friend Lord Moylan, which is the difficulties faced by people who are indefinitely retained. But the other one, which the Minister has thankfully mentioned every time he's had to speak on this issue, is the interests of the public and public safety. And therefore the action plan, which tries to balance those two interests, is exactly the right way to approach.
I thank the noble friend for the comments, and what is important is the Parole Board are doing a fantastic job. They are fantastic public servants, and the release decisions are steady at 45% of hearings over the last 5 years are leading to a positive release. And the reason why that is, I think, going in the right direction is these people now are increasingly complex individuals, and that is why the IPP action plan is working, and we need to keep the pressure on. And that is what one of the things that I'm bringing from my experience of running a business, is improving everything, having targets and real focus, and holding people to account.
My Lord, as the Minister knows very well, Much of the pressure on our prisons, including IPP members, comes from the constant probationary panic recall button pressing. And I know that the Minister's folder says don't say anything negative about probation, but I wonder whether the Minister might possibly consider something in the sentencing bill that allows the power of recall to rest with the courts and not with probation officers who, as we discovered on Thursday in HMP Belmarsh, are sending people back with such an excessive frequency it is unjust.
The sentencing bill is implementing the independent sentencing review, and IPPs were not in scope of the sentencing review because it focused on sentences that are still on the statute books. And the IPP action plan, I don't want to repeat myself, is the best way to prepare these people for release. But I'm really pleased that the Noble Lord and other Noble Lords enjoyed the visit to HMP Belmarsh on Thursday, and we had a really good opportunity to meet a number of prisoners, including an IPP prisoner. But also, what is important, and the Noble Lord mentions, is our probation service. Our probation service is where the heavy lifting of the justice system is done, and that is why I'm proud that we are increasing the funding for probation by 700 million, which is a 45% increase.
My Lords,
My Lords, the current system is failing both prisoners and the public. It keeps prisoners in indefinite limbo, as we saw on our visit to Belmarsh last week. It offers no clear route to safer release. What is wrong with the proposal for a 2-year conditional release process? I ask that as a specific question.
I thank the Noble Lord for the question and for coming along on Thursday too. The parole board is the best people to decide who's safe to be released, because public protection is our priority. And this means that people will be released if we went with the Howard League suggestion without assessing their risk, and that's not something we're prepared to do.
My Lords, sorry. There's lots of us very keen to speak up on this. So these 6 recommendations in the report, in my opinion, are a brilliant way to ensure that IPP prisoners can be properly looked after and safely released. One recommendation which particularly struck me was one that I'd moved myself previously, number 4. The aftercare duty provided under Section 117 of the Mental Health Act to be extended to all ex-IPP prisoners. If you happen to have been sectioned under this section, then there are many safe and timely ways available to give additional help for high needs of individuals to be released safely and to remain in the community. Why not then give the rest of them the same ability and support across all the different bands to sorry, I beg your pardon, my Lords, the same multi-agency support as they would have received if they'd been incarcerated in a mental hospital.
We have 233 IPP prisoners in secure mental health hospital at the moment, and from having been to the hospitals and met the individuals, the care that they get from our nursing professionals is exceptional. But what is also important is that when they come back into the prison system, they have a soft landing, not a hard landing, and that is an area that I'm working on as we speak. Also, an area of importance is when people leave prison, they go to an approved premises, and we've got a trial going on at the moment where we're extending them going there from 12 weeks to 16 weeks, but also having a dedicated individual psychologist to support them, and that is already having gains now.
The Minister, is he going to stand or not? Will the Noble Lord the Minister accept that the current recall system for IPP offenders is confused, confusing, overly bureaucratic and irrational, that it creates injustice and just increases the number of mentally ill people and those without any hope in custody? Would he please accelerate his efforts to mend it?
I thank the Noble and Learned Lord for his question, and also for the work that he and the Noble and Learned Lord Thomas has done on this area. It's really, really important, and the focus has been very helpful. Already the documents are now clearer and more focused. Senior managers now oversee all recall decisions, and from November the 3rd this year, we're extending the post-recall timeframes to improve planning and decision-making, and that's thanks to Shirley De Bono, who's helped us on that as well. But the multidisciplinary progression panels are the way to do this, because we need to make sure that everybody who's in prison on an IPP sentence has hope, engages with the action plan, and gets out and stays out.
My Lords, can the Noble Lord the Minister explain why it is that IPP prisoners have to go to such lengths to prove that they are safe to leave custody before being released, whilst others in prison for similar offences don't? Does he agree that this further difference in treatment is a further injustice against IPP prisoners, and that it really is vital and urgent that we make progress in this area?
Yeah. The Parole Board are the experts in deciding who is safe to be released, and the release tests that they have are robust and fair. But what we need to do is to make sure that when people are in front of them, they're in a really good position to be released and released safely.
Second oral question.